What's up, and welcome to Vinyl Happy Hour. I'm Skylar Davis, owner of Culture Shock Clothing and Records here in Rockford, Illinois. And we've got quite a few records to show off tonight. I got a special edition box set to show off for the finale, one extra bonus record I kind of slipped into the mix, and a little bit of history, 50 years of the man who sold the world from David Bowie. I do have a little drink. This is going to be kind of like a little bit of drunk history, especially on the Bowie release. It's been quite the interesting week as we kind of wrap up from Record Store Day and getting into holidays and Black Friday, things like that. Of course, votes and stuff are still being counted. I'm just drinking some Maker's Mark, a good classic bourbon mixed with some Diet Coke, though. Kind of give it a little longer stretch on it. Like I said, the first one we want to talk about tonight, and I do want to mention, none of these releases are exclusive indie store releases, although a lot of these releases are limited special versions, which I'm assuming you're only going to find at independent record stores probably. But there are some limited releases for sure, especially when you see colored vinyl or anniversary editions of these records. They can go out of print and out of stock right away sometimes. So if you're interested in any of these, please stop in and check out what we have at Culture Shock, or if you're not local and want to go online, or even if you are local and want to choose in-store pickup, you can find these releases at cultureshockshop.com. The first one, yesterday actually, November 4th, was the exact 50-year anniversary of the original release of David Bowie's The Man Who Sold the World. There's a lot of versions of this, so I want to break it down. One thing I really like to talk about on Vinyl Happy Hour is the packaging. We aren't playing the records and listening to the songs. I may talk a little bit about the songs and the pressing quality and stuff like that, but what's most interesting and most intoxicating, let's say, about a lot of these records is the way they're pressed, the way they're packaged, and what's interesting about the release. Obviously, having this artwork holding in your hands, seeing all the special versions of it, are what really draw me in closer to this album. This album, obviously, The Man Who Sold the World, a lot of people heard about it, I think, especially my age group, might have been from Kurt Cobain. Of course, Nirvana did the unplugged version of it. Other bands have covered it. This is one of my favorite Bowie albums, and it's always been kind of an overlooked one. This, to me, is the beginning of his glam phase, his rock and roll phase, pre-Aladdin Sane, Ziggy Stardust, all those other classic albums that came after this. A lot of people have seen this version of the album probably, and that's how RCA Records ended up reissuing it. RCA Records did it on this very thin vinyl, late 70s, early 80s. Supposedly there was an oil shortage or something like that, so their records are called Dynaflex, and they're super duper thin. I think they sound great still, regardless, but the one I really want to talk about right now is the 50th anniversary, and what's really cool is they released it with the original artwork, the way it was originally released, that David Bowie had actually selected and wanted it released. So I do have a very rare, this is an original pressing for my personal collection of the album, very strange artwork on it. This kind of cartoonish, like, what's his name? I should know this, like John Wayne. It's kind of like John Wayne looking thing, and he's actually outside of an insane asylum, and there's like a little cartoon bubble and stuff like that. I've always thought the art was kind of strange and weird, and then it says, "Oh boy, Jingo" on the back in this crazy lettering, and the thought bubble has always been empty. Well, it turns out that the original artwork that was selected by David Bowie said, "Roll up your sleeves, take a look at your arms," which is kind of strange because supposedly it's supposed to be kind of tongue-in-cheek, talking about the record arm of your needle on your record player, but there's also a lot of probably heroin connotations and take up your arms as in guns. Mercury Records took note of that and did not want to put it, so they, without his knowledge, they released it with a blank thought bubble. But on this 50th anniversary reissue, they also gave us a gatefold. Oh, it's the original title, I should say, too. It's even titled, even on the spline, that's really interesting, where the album name is. This is actually called Metropolis. Somehow a take on the Metropolis movie, but Metropolis is what David Bowie wanted to call it. When the record came out, David Bowie didn't even know this. They changed the name and changed the artwork and put David Bowie, The Man Who Sold the World. So this is the original artwork, and then it just had 9 songs by David Bowie on the bottom. So it's cool that I have an original press right here next to show off the big differences in it. The back is very similar. Tony Visconti is the one who, Visconti. He's the bassist and longtime producer of Bowie. He actually remastered this album. It's very bass heavy, considering he was the bass player. I thought my original pressing sounded great. This is such a thick piece of wax, and the bass and drums come out very heavy. The other really interesting note is this is a gatefold. So there's a lot of really great photos Actually, does this have the photo set that I wanted to show you? Oh God, thank God it does. So the other weird thing about this is Bowie later did not like the artwork. This got released in the US first. So in other countries, it got released differently. The artwork that ended up getting released in the UK was this photo that we see of Bowie wearing, he calls it a man's dress, but it's obviously a dress. And that was kind of controversial and strange. Not in the UK though, they were very more open to that. So the original album was actually released with this artwork of him on this like antique sofa with a dress on. But the US version kept this cartoonish cover. In Germany, Germany, kind of like the US, was maybe a little more prude about some things or whatever. So the artwork was really different there too. This is the Man Who Sold the World artwork, which just recently got reissued. It was like this mythic monster with David Bowie's head on it. So you've got the cartoon artwork, you've got the Bowie wearing the dress artwork, you have this winged beast artwork, and then you have the standard reissue, which had usually this black and white photo. So how strange that this same album went through 4 different changes in the artwork. Technically, now this is the 5th because this was the original artwork as opposed to what they released. So 5 different ways it's been released. This is the best sounding copy probably. I did not think I'd say that. I thought the original one would sound best, but they were not as well known yet, probably didn't have a lot of studio time. The band wasn't really ready yet. This was also the first album that Bowie had recorded with a band. His releases prior to this were more like Space Oddity and solo stuff, more folky. This album, I haven't talked much about the music since a lot of people probably haven't heard it, and you've probably heard the stripped down version of Man Who Sold the World. That is not at all representation of this. Mick Ronson actually is the guitarist for the band. He's a jamming guitarist. This is where Bowie picked up the glam rock sound. This is bluesy, rocky, heavy. The vinyl itself on this 50th anniversary, I should also point out that instead of the Mercury label going all around it, did I leave the record on the record player? I might have. Anyway, I don't need it. So the original pressing has the Mercury record label going all the way around it. I love that they used the new pressing, the 50th anniversary, and it says Bowie all the way around in a bunch of ovals on the label. It's also very thick vinyl. It's also very thick sounding, like I said. So, oh God, so many good songs. Black Country Rock is such a good song. All the Madmen, Save Your Machine, and the keyboards that are used on it. Such a great album. If you haven't heard this one yet, you've been missing out on one of the best Bowie albums. Like I said, this is where Bowie really found himself and found himself working with a band that he went on to work on with Spiders from Mars and several other versions of Bowie. So that's one that I definitely wanted to give you a little bit of drunk history on it. Like I said, not totally drunk. Oh, there's my original press. So you can see that the Mercury label going around it just says Mercury. So the reissue shows Bowie inside the label. I thought that was a really cool pressing. A lot of cool little details. I love the story on the artwork. Next up, obviously you guys should know Bowie. This is a band called Nothing I want to talk about. This is Tired of Tomorrow. They're what we call more of like a shoegaze band. This is the Great Dismal. I'm not sure why they call it the Great Dismal. I haven't gotten into the name of that yet. Maybe it's just a 2020 album, the Great Dismal of 2020. But this band, Nothing, is on Relapse Records, which usually has a lot of metal. So I thought maybe I could throw a couple of band names out there that obviously they did a really great job of the pressing, this really cool splatter vinyl. But Nothing is like a shoegazy post-rock band, something like that. They have kind of the 90s British shoegaze sound mixed with even a little bit of new metal and post-rock, US bands. But Relapse Records did really great pressing on the look of this and the sound of this. I would want to say that if you've never heard Nothing, some weird random comparisons I could tell you that they sound like for the shoegazy side, like the Stone Roses, of course, the Jesus and Mary Chain, maybe even a little bit of The Cure. US modern bands and stuff like that, I swear to God, I heard some guitar sounds that I heard in Chevelle randomly, and even Weezer and Deftones, some bands like that. But there's a weird mix and mesh of those bands. I also love the way that the vinyl's pressed. I also love how the band name Nothing, the O in Nothing ends up right on the spindle hole as part of the word. nothing. So just really interesting pressing. Relapse Records has been doing these really affordable pressings. I think this is about 24 bucks. They did this limited splatter vinyl pressing. I also love how it came with this like, kind of, they call it like the Japanese obi slip that comes over the jacket and has the track listing, the band name. There's an inner track listing on some artwork. Really cool artwork. This actually, the way this slip was over it originally, it was kind of covering this guy's face, and I thought it was like underwater mountains or something like that. I couldn't tell what it was. It's just like a cool design. I didn't realize it's like this creepy wizard Santa guy or whatever he is, but it's definitely artwork that really stands out. It's a great sounding album, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe nothing's just kind of keeping kind of things on the down low. There's been too much going on in 2020 because I didn't really hear much about this release. And I'm a huge record store geek collector and a record store owner. I almost missed that this release was coming out. So I'm really glad I figured it out and caught up on it. There's been a lot of releases coming out, and we definitely try to keep up with new releases coming in. Every Friday there's new releases. Maybe it's because Record Store Day got delayed. There's just been a lot going on. So I'm so glad that I figured out this was getting released. I was able to get some of the limited color vinyl pressings. Definitely worth checking out. Wanted to make a note of nothing. I have another album, so that's a brand new release. We were talking about the 50th anniversary. The other thing that's just always keeping us busy is there's so many reissues coming out of older bands, artists that came out during non-vinyl times like CD, and then old obscure ones that are really rare. That's this one, Sir Lord Baltimore. This is quite a rare record. Actually, this is their second release. A really cool gatefold. This is Trading Places record label did this release. A band a lot of people probably don't know about. It's pretty obscure, also about 50 years old. It came out in 71. In 1971, the biggest note about this band is that they were the opening act for Black Sabbath on one of their first tours. This is an early proto-metal US band, one of the first US bands that had that kind of metal sound when everybody else was doing radio pop rock and hippie psychedelic rock, stuff like that. Sir Lord Baltimore is considered, well, it's also weird that they're from Brooklyn. I don't know why they're called Sir Lord Baltimore. They have some pretty dark and interesting lyrics, kind of like wizardry and other things, probably like Black Sabbath. But they were pretty obscure, only did 2 releases and then kind of fell off the face of the earth. Original pressings are pretty rare, pretty expensive. So it's really cool to see that you can get a brand new reissue at a very affordable price of some of these kind of more obscure titles. It's got just a little bit of history on the band. It does talk about how on this album they had been a power trio. They added a keyboardist, second guitarist for this. I believe some of this was recorded live. It has a really good sound and it almost has a live feel to some of the recordings. But it's not like super, I mean, you know, it's 1971. You have to think all the US bands were doing stuff more like Mamas and Papas and Creedence Clearwater Revival, Grateful Dead, things like that. So it does have some of that kind of psychedelic rock, but it's a lot heavier. The bluesier, heavier parts sound a little more like Hendrix, but it's fast. Considering what year it came out, almost 50 years ago, this sounds more like power metal and kind of like the new wave of British heavy metal. Like, I could see how this would have influenced or been heard by guys early on, and even Venom and Iron Maiden and some of those bands. Probably even Metallica. It's one of the heavier bands compared to, like, let's say Blue Cheer was another US band at the same time doing some really heavy stuff. That's cool artwork. Pick up an original if you can ever find one. In the meantime, if you want a brand new mint condition copy, pick up this reissue. Really cool to see that kind of obscure stuff, and also just, I think a lot of collectors of heavy psych rock and doom metal know about them, or maybe somebody who knows about Black Sabbath first tour, but that's another cool one to check out. Speaking of doom metal and Black Sabbath and stuff like that, one of my favorite bands, Sleep. This is one where I already have a pressing of this, and I'm not sure the significance of why they did this reissue, but Sleep's Dope Smoker, one of the most epic doom metal albums ever. They're doing this limited release, really cool way of doing the artwork on a picture disc. It's a double LP picture disc on this really thick vinyl kind of plastic covering to hold it. And the center spline has the track listing and the release listing. So that's the outside of the art. I'll show you the inside too. And then it pulls out from the inside here too. But they did a really nice job of doing a picture disc inside of a sleeve that's actually functional and usable. It doesn't just fall apart. I saw these guys live Lauren's a trooper too. She went to the show with me. It was so loud, so good, so heavy. Dope Smoker, I think it's, I forgot, an hour and 3 minutes long or something like that. It takes up, it is an hour and 3 minutes long. So that's why this is a double LP. It takes up the entire A side, B side, and C side. And then the D side has a couple more tracks on it. But Dope Smoker is the most epic, long, riff-heavy thing. What's also, you know, it's obviously in worship of weed smoke and things like that. I don't even smoke, but I just enjoy the album. I get down to it. Really thick, deep grooves. One of the bands that kind of revived that Black Sabbath sound in the 90s and stuff like that. And they're still going. So they're still doing their heavy tunes. But I just wanted to show that off. This has already been released in black vinyl, green vinyl. There's a picture disc now. I just want to do a real quick short mention of another very obscure release. We're getting into the 50-year mark on a lot of these. I forgot the year on this one. I feel like it might have been 1971 also. Yeah, another one, almost 50 years old. This is Lucifer, Black Mass. Mort Garson had done like children's music and weird obscure music, almost like Sesame Street-ish, like semi-educational music with a Moog synthesizer and all sorts of sound effects. Well, then this is a real strange that he did this Lucifer Black Mass album. This is on pink vinyl. It's pretty dark and weird, but it's a lot of sound effects, a lot of groove, rhythm, heavy noises and sound and electronics, experimental, but it deals in like more occult and exorcism and Black Massy things. This would have been a good Halloween one if you don't, but I just wanted to mention there's some really cool, we get some really strange, obscure releases. Like I said, these are all going to be available while they're in stock still at cultureshockshop.com if you want to reserve your copies of any of those. This is another one. It's actually a reissue, but a super special version of Tesseract. Now, this is Altered State, the 2020 reissue box set. Tesseract, I saw them open for Between the Buried and Me. This is like a very post-rock, proggy, experimental. I mean, they're metal in a way, but in like a prog metal way. If you haven't heard Tesseract, the other interesting thing is, in my memory, I thought this was a lot more instrumental. There are a load of vocals on it though. So it's really cool how the box set is packed because you actually get the album instrumental and the full band with all the vocals. So one's instrumental, double LP, comes with the CDs. It's really cool packaging too. I just love the way that this opens up. One's black, one's white. I think that this is the instrumental version. Yeah, the black one's the all instrumental. But it's kind of a concept album too. I love how each album is labeled. Like you've got one of matter, of mind, of reality, and of energy. So it kind of takes you on a trip. The vocals are very high, very angelic actually. I love the artwork though too. On the label and inside, it's super minimal. But it's almost jazz, prog rocky in a metal way. Even kind of emo-ish almost with the vocals. I don't know if I should say that or not, but it's pretty epic. So I think fans of prog rock, jazz, metal, hardcore, anything could get into this. The other reason I'm really getting this, their stuff's kind of rare, kind of hard to find. And I feel like this is definitely going to go up in value. So I wanted to get it before it ends up being out of print. It's also cool that it comes with the CDs. If you don't want to hear the vocals, you just want to hear all the technical guitars and drums, you have the instrumental version too. But I just love the way they package this in here. Double gatefolds, 2 LPs on regular and 2 LP instrumental. That's the Tesseract one. That's how the band is spelled, Tesseract. If you want to look them out, check out some more from them. This release, we only got a couple in. I don't know how limited it was. It does not say how many pressings they made. It's also an import. The vinyl did get a regular pressing, not the instrumental, just the regular album a few years ago. It's pretty expensive now if you can find it. It's been out of print for quite a few years. But yeah, I was just really impressed with the band live. They played very technical, very good, very precise, very just chuggy, very tight. I love how everyone works together. The guitars really intertwine together. The vocals also just really soar in some places. Great drumming too, just a good kick. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. And like I said, it doesn't quite fall into like a metalcore category or anything like that. Kind of hard to categorize, but the pressing and the artwork and stuff, the jacket is also very kind of soft and textured. The other thing too, I noticed, this is real trippy. The way these dots are all kind of, looks like you can see into, like you're looking into the earth or something like that. Very deep tunnels. So very cool minimal artwork. I thought they did a really good job of packaging that together for a nice affordable price. And it's not overly thick, so it's not gonna take up a big chunk of my record rack, so I could fit some more vinyl in. Every week we like to give you a few kind of deeper looks at some of the packaging special releases. A lot of times we have indie store exclusives that are only available to independent record stores. You can find a section of those on our website too. And please, if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can check out some of our previous Vinyl Happy Hour videos and shoot us a comment of what you're listening to or any ideas you would like to see us cover for future videos about stereo equipment, record players. We're going to be putting together a few more sessions of things like that. So good luck with the rest of your week. Enjoy your vinyl. Cheers.